All right, you guys ready for me to like give some kind of introduction or whatever?
Yeah, awesome.
All
Oh, we
right.
have to do that?
I don't know. No, I didn't mean we have to like go in a circle and do
Yeah.
something.
I was
It
like, I don't
was
have any
like,
fun facts in my
yeah.
brain right now about me, so
You just got to be a
Um,
more fun person, Keegan,
I am
and
the
you'll come
most
up with
fun
them.
person, Nikola.
You're up there.
I am so fun. I just sound like I'm dying. All right, all
hey.
right.
Okay, so this is okay. So basically, the conception of this, and we don't have to stick to it by any means, is that we have like Logan and me on the left, and obviously, like when you and this is politically, of course, um, you have Logan and me on the left, and Nicola and Matt on the right, and Keegan like somewhere in the center-ish.
Somewhere, somewhere there.
You can move the center line's pretty arbitrary, we know, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah, but that's the basic structure, and I don't want to like have teams of people going against each other. And I know like I don't know, I'm not great about it, but like you guys like aren't very confrontational. Like this is not going to be like a super harsh debate. Like it like everybody's kind of being thrown into this a bit. So if you feel that way, that's okay. And we're not gonna be ganging up on anyone. We can make points, and
Logan, you suck.
yeah, they could be pointed and harsh points, but like we're not. That's not going to be like the general mood, you know. We can stick to whatever comes of that. Just like have a fun time with it. Talk about politics. I tried to get a balance of people from both sides, but you don't have to stick to that. If you have an opinion that's different from it, sure, and you don't have to be like educated on the opinion either. Is that all good?
Yeah.
All right.
All right. So who's been paying attention to what's happening in the protests and such?
It's hard not
Yeah,
to.
a little
Yeah.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, am I still in command of the conversation? I guess. All
I
right.
mean,
All right. Okay. I can do this. I can do it. It's fine. um. All right. So what do people think of the protests? Is it justified? I think that's well. Okay. Yeah. We'll start there. It should progress naturally, right? Is the protest justified?
I gotta say, protests are always justified. Um, whether someone agrees with the protest or not, it's very important that people have the right to protest. And I can give a personal anecdote to back this up. Um, Actually, it's not my experience, but of my family's experience. So my dad grew up in a communist country, Yugoslavia, and in totalitarian communist countries, the citizens do not have the right to protest. So problems were just stifled. People couldn't come out and say, "This is wrong with the country. I want this to change," and that was not good. People just did not have a voice. So that's something that I definitely appreciate about the United States. That no matter what, someone can argue that the sky should be called red and come out and protest, and no one would stop them. That's a great thing about the United States.
Except like for one thing, people aren't stopping them, right? Like there are protests, but there's like counter protests from like cops and stuff. Like they aren't just being given free reign to. And I'm not saying they should be, but they aren't in practice being given free reign to do whatever they want. Especially if you're poor, you go out in a protest, you get arrested, and they can arrest whoever they want, right? Like if the cops are out in full force because some of the protesters are rioting, they feel entitled, and they are entitled by the law and by the social atmosphere to do whatever they want to whomever they want. And if they catch you, they're not going to let you off because, oh, you probably weren't the bad one. You can have like something on your permanent record, and if you're poor and already in a bad state like that, that pretty much wrecks your life, puts you in more bad circumstances. Like we're not great about allowing protests over here. Like there's a lot of nominal rights, you know.
Yeah.
Are you
Floyd.
talking about protests or riots? Like peaceful protests?
Well,
You
well,
can't
even
get arrested for peaceful protests.
no, but if you are participating in a peaceful protest that turns into a riot, there isn't some moment where everybody involved in a protest suddenly decides to switch it to a riot and suddenly cross what is already a fairly fuzzy line. And you're still going to have a ton of people out in the streets who were protesting and might not even know that across town people started rioting, and now the official designation has changed from protest to riot, and the police are authorized to use more force.
That's true. I think if a protester does become violent, I think it's justified for the police to arrest them. But in that atmosphere, I can see how it would be very very confusing, and that the police might, might likely take a peaceful person for a violent person, which is not okay. Um,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
You good? Okay.
And those kind of repercussions don't only happen on like non-violent protesters too. Like I saw just like a residential like suburban neighborhood in Minneapolis, and like there's police like marching down the street and saying "Get inside," in this like super like overly macho voice. Like even just among
And shooting at people in their own houses,
yeah,
like opening the
I
doors.
think it was
Yeah.
like a paintball gun or something like equivalent to that, right?
But
Yeah,
it's,
but
isn't
there was a
rubber
curfew
bullets,
put
right?
on the curfew was put for a reason though, right? Because the city is like completely overrun. Like buildings are on. Like, I mean, you guys have seen everything, but like
Mhm.
I don't know. I feel they're told to do something and they're doing it, and I don't think that they're. I mean,
Yeah. I
like
mean, they're
obviously,
not free agents. Yeah. It's the system that
yeah.
would be the problem.
Yeah,
Um,
it's like these people they're just on their porch in a video, like
Yeah.
they're not on their lawn or anything.
yeah.
So if you were a cop, do you think it's okay that like the state tells you you can literally fire on anyone you want because there's a curfew, and you go out and execute that to the point of firing at women on their doorsteps, like clearly not doing anything? Like, is that how you would practice? Are you okay with the highest arbiters of law in our society doing that?
Um, no, I personally myself, I wouldn't do that. And I think maybe if you're saying like, I don't know, the curfew is what was it? Was it 8 o'clock?
Yeah, something like that.
Is it? Yeah. So let's say there's a curfew, and someone's out on the front porch. I feel like that's not really like, because you can peacefully protest on your porch, right? Like that's not you're not breaking into a Target or anything like that. And I feel like yeah, maybe that is a problem, but I still kind of stand firm on the point that the police are there to do their job, and I think I'm not there while they're doing it, and obviously it looks terrible, just somebody firing at an innocent person on their porch. But yeah, I don't know. I still think that the police are they have the kind of the right to go and enforce this curfew that has been kind of put on the city, obviously because desperate times call for desperate measures.
Okay.
So, I mean, all of that is true. They do have the right, according to the state that gave them the right, and they're not in power to like be the one to change it. Like if all the cops next to you turn and fire at innocent people, I mean, there are many among us who would just turn and fire on innocent people with them. That doesn't like make it okay. Like that doesn't make it a good system. If it's that systemic, it's not that we're calling out individuals. It's that hey, you have a problem where if there are individuals doing that, you don't have the power to stop them, and you can't retreat to well, that's that they're allowed to do that, because what we're saying is the problem is that they're allowed to do that.
Now, wait, before we debate this, does someone know the actual rules of curfew and what police are allowed to do enforcing it? Because that would be some very important foundational information to this debate.
I don't know exactly. I hope someone else does, but just to get in, police can do whatever they want because you can't stop them from doing whatever they want. If you know that a police officer is doing something illegal to you, you can't like righteously resist that and get away with it because you're still resisting arrest. The police officer can arrest you for whatever they want, and they can shoot you if you resist arrest. Like there's no actual recourse you have for defending yourself against an unjust police officer. They're given all of the power and all of the tools to weaponize that for like moralizing evil.
I think that I think it goes back to if you're I don't know, I feel like I think it's just generally for me, I obviously because my father is a police officer, I respect the police. And I feel like no matter I'm not I don't think I'll ever I hope not I'm never in a position where I'm guilty and a police officer is I'm being accused of something, or I'm maybe pulled over or something and I have something to hide. Um, and I think I don't know, like sorry, what I'm trying to say is that I'm not and I hope I'm never going to be in a place where I feel the need to resist arrest. I feel like if you just if you're compliant and you tell the police officer what they want to know, or just I don't know, answer the questions. Don't be defiant. Don't act like they're your enemy, because most police officers aren't like they're in reality. They're not going to be your enemy. Like obviously, this is a terrible thing that happened, and that's really not the vast majority of police officers. And I think if you're compliant, then you're not going to be put in a position where that police officer is doing something that could be considered illegal or that is illegal to you. I think it's as simple as that. I mean, obviously there are things that could be said about that as well, but
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, I looked up the Minneapolis curfew order. It defines curfew as not being able to travel on any public street or any public place. So I think you would be allowed to even be on your lawn or something, but I don't think that's
But you're not, because the cops can do whatever they want.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, I was going to say something else. I forgot, so I'm not going to try to articulate it.
Okay. Keegan, you want to take this one? Or?
Yeah, I was gonna jump in.
All right.
I feel like I've
Cool.
already lost whatever thought I had. Where I don't know, because I've talked to like 3 people today who have kind of all said similar stuff about just like, the majority of cops, are good, and things like that. And I don't even want to refute that at the moment. I don't think that. Oh shit! How am I gonna make this cohesive? I think that in these in the examples that keep being brought up at these protests, the people that have been killed or have been that have experienced police brutality, it's not even always that they were resisting arrest. Some of them don't even get that far. And if the police as an organization, doesn't have consequences for that sort of behavior, then I don't think it really matters if the majority are good cops. Because why are these bad cops getting away with it? Why aren't these bad cops suffering any consequences? And why aren't these good cops, holding the bad cops accountable? I guess is what I would think about that.
I think that's like roughly what I was going to say, would be that even you can still have the overall system be broken and have the majority of cop people interactions still be okay. That doesn't mean necessarily, it doesn't follow naturally from that the system isn't broken because the majority of interactions with civilians are fine.
Yeah, because you want to take.
Yeah, is it true that there are no legal repercussions for police brutality?
It's not like on the books, but in practice, yeah. Like so the specific cop, Chauvin or whatever, the one who killed the guy who Matthew wasn't resisting arrest, like he was. I mean, he may have not been resisting arrest because 2 of the other cops there were holding him down, so he literally couldn't even go into like death throes or whatever. Like that, those are the good cops, the ones that are like standing next to him and not doing anything. When was the last time you saw like a good cop action that would be like the good cop action there? I hope you would agree is like pulling a gun on your fellow cop and like getting him to stop doing that. Like the guy's saying he can't breathe. You can just put him in the police car, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, like, what was it? It was like $20 of fraud, something like that. Was that?
Yeah, like forgery, something.
Yeah, it was like to come. I think, right? Or were they actually trying to? I don't know the background too well.
It was just forgery, something like around. Yeah, it's small, and not so non-violent, and he didn't resist arrest. They could have just thrown him in the cop car; it would have been fine.
Yeah, but I think what Matt meant. There we go. What Matt meant was that Though there are some examples of brutal cops there who commit crimes without having someone resist arrest or even give any reason for them to. Um, and of course, George Floyd broke the law in a small way. I assume that's a misdemeanor, but I'm not sure. Anyways, definitely not warranting the treatment he got in any way. But I think what Matt is trying to say is that it's likely that the majority of policemen in the same situation would not do that and would behave nicely. Um,
But you have four examples right there of people who either would do that or would help someone doing that or would not stop a fellow cop from doing that.
See, but those four policemen just mean those four policemen. They were not randomly selected from the United States. You know, you cannot say that they represent people. They just, for all
Okay,
we
but
know, they represent.
They were
themselves.
randomly selected from a single police department. And yeah, that's a particularly racist police department, probably. But there's evidence for that we can get into in a minute that it is a racist police
Okay, yeah.
department. But I wanted to go back
Yeah.
specifically to the thing that I meant to say earlier, and I got tangled up in other stuff, is that there may technically be legal repercussions for cops, but they often don't experience them. Like the specific cop, Chauvin, had 18 previous complaints against him, 2 of which were for open firing on civilians. He had been some form of accomplice to the police killing of 6 other civilians, and just was never prosecuted. Like, if 18 complaints and all of that can lead to you still being actively on the force, like that's a problem. And the reason he's still on the force is because they can't just remove him without repercussions from the police. So you basically have a system where like the police unions are strong enough that like they can't just go around firing cops because the cops don't want to have repercussions. On the whole, they're not cops individually, but the cops as an organization, basically functioning as a gang. They don't want repercussions on the whole. If you give them one repercussion in the form of firing someone like that, you're showing them that they can't do whatever they want, and they're going to do something about that. Like when cops go on strike or when they turn against their city, like ugly things happen, right? Like they could have even just arrested him after he was after he committed this murder. Like they could have just arrested him there, but they didn't. They didn't even arrest him. Like if they had arrested him, riot probably wouldn't have happened. Like this goes back to like the first thing Nikola said when we just started is like all protests are justified because people have reasons. Otherwise they wouldn't riot. And the reason here, I mean, it was hardly the killing of one guy. Like it's a systemic buildup on a scale way larger than the destroying of a target. But to the degree that it is that specific incident, like that's still like the buildup of the whole thing. And it all could have been averted, probably, by just like by just
Bless you.
arresting the single cop.
So Ian, there are. So you're saying there's special interests, like powerful special interests. That is the police unions that keep the system powerless, the police system powerless to investigate and prosecute people like Chauvin.
I don't think the police system even wants to prosecute. I think it's a decent excuse, but they're all working in tandem with each other. There is no agent in government that is genuinely looking out for the people's interests completely pro bono and even has a significant interest in trying to overturn something like that. Like all the harshest DAs in the country, like Klobuchar and Kamala Harris, like there's like a huge blind spot in how much they over prosecute, and it's cops. Like they just don't prosecute cops.
See, it's true that people have self-interest keeping them in office, but I wouldn't be so hasty to say that every or even the majority of members in the police system do not care to watch out for the citizens, because that goal of keeping safety among citizens is what underlies becoming a policeman. If someone purely cares about their self-interest, whether that be financial self-interest or decision-making self-interest, there are many other positions besides policemen that serve that better.
No, but they want the job policemen, and those are the people who are going to get it because those are the people currently policemen, and those are the people they're looking for to replace them or fill their ranks with.
Not everyone though. Those are just the people that you hear about. It's not like the entire system is corrupt.
But the existence of people like that implies that the system is corrupt, because any system that allows people like that to exist,
Mhm.
like, has a kind of method of reinforcement or lack of punishment, I guess you could say,
Mhm.
for like bad behavior. Like, obviously, this isn't just going to magically self-correct by, just leaving it alone.
Yeah, like, guys, what would you do if you were like a good cop? Like, if you were the best, most moral cop, if you were like the guy standing next to Chauvin, or you were the guy ordered to go out and fire on people going out of their houses, or you were just ordered to fire on protesters, even like would you just obey that? Because if you're gonna obey that, then I feel like that's part of the problem, even if you wouldn't instigate it.
My knee-jerk reaction to what would you do if you were the goodest cop would just be to stop being a cop. But like, if I don't, like, I don't know, because I always feel like it's dumb to be like, oh, if it were me. But I don't know how you don't see a dude getting choked out for, I wasn't like 8 minutes. It was like a long time that he was under that guy's knee, and I don't know how you just I watched that for that long. I don't know, without without doing something or saying something. So
Yeah, I
I
think
don't
we can
know.
all agree that that was a terrible, like there was nothing right at all about that entire situation.
But
I feel
would
like
you,
that's
as the fourth guy who sees three other cops holding someone, killing someone on the ground, who clearly doesn't deserve it, and you think it's a bad act, what would you do in that circumstance? Because if you would do something, you would get fired for it. You would no longer be a cop. The cops get 1% worse. If you don't do something, I feel like that's pretty good proof that the problem's systemic and not individual cops.
Yeah.
But what makes you think that you'd get fired if you spoke up or did something? Why would that mean that you automatically get fired?
Okay, what do you mean by spoke up or did something? If you just are like on the side and you're like, I don't know, maybe like don't,
You know,
can you not kill
I don't
him?
mean that. Like if
But
you like threw one of them off of, or if you like fought for the guy
no,
instead
you
of,
absolutely
yeah,
would get fired for that.
why?
Yeah,
Why do you
because
think what?
those are not the people in power in the police office. Those, yeah, you're disrupting the police's authority. Why are they going to keep you around? Why would they keep someone actively undermining the power of the police on their payroll?
Well, I think it's simple. Like obviously because what they were doing was wrong. If you're doing the right thing, they're probably like I feel like the testimony of the one good police officer and George Floyd and possible bystanders. There were bystanders, right? Like there are people.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like you'd be fine. I don't like you might have to. I don't know. You'd obviously have to like talk more than just go into the police station and say, "Oh yeah, this happened," um, stuff like that. Like there'd probably be a process, but I doubt you'd get fired. I don't think it has anything to do with like betrayal of the police's authority just by standing up for what you think is right. Like if it's a life or death situation, like he was screaming that he couldn't breathe, then I feel like they wouldn't just be like, yeah, you're gone because just because you I don't know stopped your fellow police officers from uh, stepping or kneeling on this guy's neck. Like I feel like it wouldn't be that black and white.
Ian,
I
you're
agree with Matt here. Oh, do you mind, Logan, if I
just telling you
second that?
one off.
Oh,
I
yeah,
know.
thank you.
I'm looking for stuff on my phone. Just you guys keep talking.
Okay, good. Yeah, I agree with Matt there. I mean, just look at how much publicity this case has, and how much the public opinion is against those policemen who did not intervene, or the fourth policeman who did not intervene. Um, Sorry, I worded that wrong. See how much the public interest is against the policemen who did not intervene and against the police brutality. If one of those policemen had backed away and had intervened and possibly saved George Floyd, the public interest would definitely recognize that man's actions at this point.
Yeah,
And,
but
and
they
through legal
would if it
process.
happened. But like, where are the examples of that happening? Like, there's enough racist cops killing people. You'd think eventually you'd find some incident where a racist cop was stopped from killing somebody, by a fellow cop.
Good point. Well, the fact that we haven't heard of those cases doesn't mean they don't exist.
Yeah,
Well,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
but it's certainly no evidence for them.
Well, there on that point.
The
Not
fact
sure.
that we
Like, yeah, it just
I'm sorry, you don't think there's like so many people in America right now who would love a story of a heroic cop stopping the murder of a black man? You don't think half the country's media is out there like frothing at the mouth for a story like that? That would totally get like completely.
That's,
don't
a lot.
think
That's
so.
a lot of clicks. That's a lot of clicks.
Good
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, sure. That's a good point.
Yeah, I don't know though. I feel like for some reason I feel like, and this is like a whole other issue, but it's really tied in. I feel like the media and today's world is not a world that is for the police. And there are good stories where it's like, oh, police officer has like, I don't know, like nice moment, something like that. But I think generally the stories that people want to hear about the police, or not want to hear, but the stories that people are intrigued about, that people get fired up about, and people get like, I don't know, a lot of people think now, yes, like the police forces, it's racist, or like police are racist and things. I'm losing my thought here. I don't know. Obviously, yes, it would be great to hear a story of a police officer, but that doesn't get nearly as much coverage as
No,
a
but
police
it
officer
would.
doing something wrong.
Like, even if you are like thinking that like Fox News is like oppressed and like that whole spectrum of media is not the zeitgeist, which is true. I mean, they're the outlier. They are demeaned by the other news media, which like in practice aren't much better. Like, but there's still those people still exist. They're still reporting on it. Our grandparents are still watching it constantly, among many others. Like they that story that hypothetical story would be like so good for Fox News. It would be plastered all over there for days. And maybe the media is so bad now that the rest of the media wouldn't even talk about it at all. But
But see, I think
Fox News would be like lapping that up.
See, I think the thing is, though, I think if you think about it, the amount of good cops out there, the amount of good police officers out there, that obviously treat people with respect and they do their job well, I feel like in order for someone to get to a point where it's like a police officer saved someone from being killed, I feel like there's like a lot of bad that has to happen there. And I think that type of bad with police officers doesn't happen enough, where there are stories about like, oh, police officer, anti-racist police officer saves black man from being killed by a fellow officer or something like that. I think like that kind of speaks to the I don't know, the general consensus of police. I don't think that like police officers who aren't racist are I don't think that regular police officers who just do their job, I feel like they don't encounter instances where things like that happen too often. And obviously if they did, like that would get coverage, because what a great thing on someone's record if they saved someone from another police officer who wasn't doing their job correctly.
Yeah, I think that though we also, sorry to kind of pivot a little bit, we also shouldn't only consider the most extreme circumstances. Like even if you disregard all the things that are newsworthy, there's still like an immense amount of
just cops are racist in general.
Even just like pulling over people. I think I saw some stats on the Minneapolis police before.
I have the stats. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, and it was very disproportionate in terms of like pulling over and like not stopping first, but like similar things to that. It was all very disproportionate. It was something like 40% or 60% of stops were black people. So it's like
Logan, sorry, but before we pivot, I want to you good? So Matt, what you basically said there is like you think that the majority of cops are good, but we don't have a big enough sample size of bad cops killing black people for no reason for there to yet have been a good cop there while a black guy was being killed. I don't feel like that supports the idea that the good cops are in the majority.
Okay, so I think I understand what you're saying. I'm trying to think. Yeah, no, that what you're saying makes sense for sure, but I think I don't know, like there usually aren't too many cases where there are four other police officers there just by four other police officers, like three on one person. I feel like that's an extreme.
Well, police
I
officers
think
have
for
partners and stuff, right?
yeah, they do, but a lot of times they don't. So I think I don't know. Like I stand by saying that the majority of police officers are good. I think there are so many police officers that never get any like they don't no one ever hears about any of them. Like they're just police officers doing their thing, being good at their job. I don't know, treating citizens of all kinds with respect. And I think I don't know. That's just
Yeah.
my opinion.
No, and that can be true while still acknowledging that there's a systemic problem with the police in that those quote unquote good cops who are just doing like I don't think just doing their job is enough to be a good cop. Like you have to be fighting the bad cops. You have to be actively working to get them out of the police force. But instead, it basically ends up being that you as a new recruit to the cops come in to a whole group of people who are already on the same page morality wise, and you have to conform to that or they'll kick you out.
What do you mean morality wise?
I mean bad morality. Like racism.
Do you think that police officers just like do you think that a lot of police officers are openly racist with their colleagues?
I don't feel like they have to be for there to be a problem, but it is possible.
What do you mean?
I think they could be completely fine in terms of not literally making like actively offensive jokes and saying the N-word and still perpetuating racism in society through racist like police discrimination. We're pushing that off for now because we're talking about this, but we'll definitely get to that. That's next up. But like you don't have to like make jokes about how blacks are inferior to like continue the oppression of blacks. Yes. And do you have something specific to respond to that, or I was gonna pull up something about the whole good cops getting fired thing.
Oh no.
All right.
Do your thing.
All right. So this is not well researched, but I have 8 people who got fired for exposing corruption, protesting corruption, like driven to suicide for being a whistleblower. Like I don't know, like 8 examples isn't a ton, right? But like it happens. People, especially women, get driven out of the police force like as soon as they like expose any kind of corruption.
Those examples of 8 are examples. They don't mean much unless someone were to do a deep statistical analysis.
Yeah, but you're not, right? You and Matt are just saying, "Oh, I think they're probably good," and
Yes,
that's a
I
great.
think they're probably
Yeah.
bad.
But I'm the one with at least some statistics and examples. And my assertion that they're bad doesn't require that every cop be bad. It requires that a minority be bad and that minority not be adequately addressed by the majority, which is clearly the case. As for actual statistics, are we ready to go into statistics? Anyone else got a point?
I mean, I was just gonna. Oh shoot, we went over it really fast. I don't know. I think that every time that I hear someone say that, like, the majority of cops are good, or that, I don't know, something to that effect. I always feel like, because I used to say things like that and feel things like that. But that's because I, was raised in a community and by family that trust cops, that have the privilege of, feeling safe around them and feeling like we can, ask them questions, that when we get pulled over, it's for a valid reason, and that, if we haven't, assuming we haven't, done anything terribly wrong, that, we're relatively safe. And I think that sort of I don't want to call that like a safety net, but I am going to call it a safety net. I think that safety net kind of just allows people that are raised in that sort of environment with that mentality to be more optimistic about the majority of police officers, you know? And I just don't think that every community and every group of people has that luxury or that privilege. So
Yeah,
That's-
point. Perception matters a lot.
Yeah, that's some really smart thinking. But I do want to bring up 1 point or 2 points. 1 point is a statistical point. The other is an anecdotal point. So statistically, Ian, you brought up that Matt and I are saying the majority of cops are good, whereas you and the others are saying that the majority of cops, or at least the system itself, is bad, and that the majority of cops do not have the faculty of pointing out corruption in the system. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Okay, good. So, um, but what my in bringing up that without like a statistical analysis, you cannot be certain of anything, is not to say that my view of cops being good is statistically proven, but that without thorough and valid enough statistics, I'm not going to want to say either. I'm not going to want to say yes, I think that there is a way for corruption to be exposed. I'm not going to make that claim, but I'm also not going to make the claim that it cannot be until I can see enough statistics.
what statistics would you be looking for there?
So, like one example would be a survey, a survey of randomly selected participants from the police departments in the U.S. saying, do you feel comfortable speaking out if you see something wrong in how other police are acting? Uh, Questions like that. Questions also, like, have you seen someone speak out and have repercussions? Just surveys like that with statistics. With statistics, you can actually see the makeup of a group like the police department. With anecdotes, it's hard to, and I don't think that people should be making either argument with certainty. Um, and the other thing is anecdotal. Uh, this is sort of bouncing off of an argument that Matt was making. Um, think about how many arrests happened last weekend, or this weekend and last week alone around the U.S. Thousands. And how many arrests made it to the news as a case of police doing their job horribly wrong and causing brutality? One.
No, more
And we
than
know
one.
yeah, way more than
were there
one.
other cases this
I mean,
week?
all the cases
I mean,
in the protests and riots, like
yeah,
tons of
most
those
the
are
news has been
illegitimate.
about-
Yeah,
Okay, so a few dozen.
no, hundreds at least across the U.S. Yeah, totally.
No, I mean cases of police brutality that have come to the or police misconduct that have come to the forefront of the news
I
recently.
have seen
A
dozens.
very-
I'm sure there are hundreds of this
Okay.
weekend.
Yeah, but a very small percentage of the overall arrests that have happened. If every single arrest or many of the arrests going on in the country were with misconduct, then we would be seeing an influx of that in the news. Not just, oh, there were many, but it would be that, wow, there's this. The list would go on forever of police misconduct. However,
You
of the
have
thousands,
lists.
tens of thousands of arrests happening this week, only a very small percentage that should not exist, but a small percentage nevertheless, that shows that most of the police actions going on are likely, and I say likely because without statistics you can never be sure, say they are likely legitimate.
Yeah, I mean, okay. For one thing, there are lists like that. I don't like have any of them, but there are like it's totally going to depend on what you count as an illegitimate arrest. Like that's going to be very flexible, and also the like you like this like what is your plan for fixing this? What would you do?
I don't
In your
have an
brain.
idea. I was just
Okay,
trying
well,
to point out the likely reality right now that the majority of police activity in the United States is likely good.
Yeah, I think we've been saying that doesn't matter. Matt, this is a bit of a pivot, but back to something we were talking about earlier. Do you have any anecdotes, just wondering about like how speaking out against people is treated, police-wise?
Sorry, how like good police
Ha-
officers speaking out against like
Against the system, yeah.
I don't. I haven't looked enough into that at all. But
I just meant like from
I don't know.
family stuff.
I know. Oh, family stuff. Well, I know
Yeah.
my father. He works in a very professional environment. I've been there multiple times, and I know him as a person, and I know quite a few of his friends who are on the force. And 100%, they would absolutely, if I asked my dad right now, they would 100% work to get rid of someone not doing their job properly or using, I don't know, like their own personal prejudices or anything like that to, I don't know, to use, I don't know, just anything bad. Like they wouldn't. It's not. They would not tolerate it. And I know
Well, okay.
Canada and the U.S. are, but
Yeah.
it's. I think it's the same.
hmm So just wondering, what if so you are so your dad is like in the establishment of the police, right? Basically,
What do you mean?
like
Like
he's not like considered like an outsider or whatever, right? He's like with the group. He's friends with all the cops and everything, right? To a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like,
Yeah.
and none of those cops think they're racist or anything, and they're not instituting anything like that. What if you had a new cop come in that tried to be like pointing out to all the members of your dad and his friends, like, hey, you guys are being really racist here with these policing strategies. Look at these statistics on how many black people you're pulling over. How would that entire department, the establishment that you have that includes your dad, how would they react to an outsider coming in with something like that?
So I don't exactly know. I'm not a statistics guy, which I guess it's a little bit of a problem for like a statistical debate. But statistic wise, the crime rate I know in Toronto is it's really high in the less developed parts of Toronto, I guess I could say.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, in those parts, a lot of those communities, like this is nothing, this is just factual. A lot of that, the population of those communities is like African Americans.
Yeah.
And the where my dad works in Toronto, it's obviously like he works there for a reason. It's a crime-ridden area.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, I've seen it as well. A lot of and this is like obviously, I hope you guys understand that this isn't a personal. I'm literally saying just from what I've seen and what I've heard, not the majority, a lot of the people, unfortunately, that commit these big crimes and the things that my dad looks out for and the things that the Toronto Police Force does. A lot of them are people of color, and I think that it speaks to the community. Obviously, it's unfortunate, like I said, that
Yeah.
the communities are like that. But sorry, I'm getting off track. I 100% know my dad, and like I said, I know some of his friends, but I know my dad the most, obviously, and he's not a racist, and he's got no racist tendencies, and he wouldn't like you can't. I feel like you can't really be racist on accident. I mean, sorry, you can, but like if
You
you're
definitely can.
yes,
Sorry.
but sorry, I meant you're working in a job like being a police officer, you're not gonna like he doesn't have any prejudices that he would use in the
No,
force.
that's what I'm saying is like people have prejudices that they don't recognize, and unearned confidence in your own lack of prejudice can lead you to be even more prejudiced and speak out against anyone who does try to acknowledge prejudice. Do you see how that works to enforce the
Yes.
attitude that I was talking about earlier about how people calling out corruption get ostracized? Because all the people who are doing the corruption, they don't think they're corrupt, they don't think they're racist. They're just doing their jobs. They're just sending more cops to black-ridden areas. Logan, do you want to take the counterpoint to that? 'Cause I know you know it. Or do you want me to keep going?
No, yeah, you go.
All right. So basically, like just sending more cops to more crime-ridden areas. Okay. Say you start out with with a society that has been enslaving blacks for centuries, and you freed them all, but you didn't really like give them money to boost them up to the status of white people. Like all the white people had an advantage, or not all, but like a good number of them. Like all the people at the top are white people, all the cops are white people, and then you have these. Then you have this obvious correlation that you've acknowledged between like poverty and crime. Like that's a thing. And then so you have this police department that's trying to allocate where to send its police officers. And one of the areas has much more crime than the other one. So you send more police officers to the crime-ridden area, right? Because there's more crime to deal with there. So you put more cops on patrol, you catch more criminals. When you go back to analyze the stats again, the percentages jumped even more. Now there's even more crime over here because the crime is really the amount of crime found. So by continuing to send cops there, you're not only finding more crime, which is perpetuating your cycle of dumping more cops into the area, you're also causing more crime in the future by locking up so many like fathers and people and like forcing all these people to continue in poverty, like going to the next generation without any resources to get out of poverty. So they have to turn to crime, which reinforces the criminality of the black neighborhoods, which reinforces how many cops get sent there, which reinforces how many black dads get stolen from their families for whatever, especially like pre-marijuana legalization. Like this was even worse, right? And you had cops that would go to black neighborhoods and they would arrest blacks disproportionately for smoking marijuana, which is harmless. And what does a good cop do?
It doesn't matter that it's harmless. It was against the law. If it's against the law, then obviously people who enforce the law are going to.
Yeah, but the law is not like objective. Like, yeah, if your view is that it's the law, so you got to follow it no matter what, you're gonna like invest in slavery, whatever. Like this is not a moral road you can reasonably go down.
But
Is that the law justifies
slavery was many years ago.
But if you were there and you had the policy of, well, the law is the law, you'd justify slavery. You'd find something.
No. I understand what you're saying, but I disagree. I would never justify slavery.
No,
Yeah,
you
I
wouldn't.
wouldn't compare arresting someone for marijuana to slavery.
No, I mean, you can in the sense that the only response to why did you arrest that person for marijuana is because it's illegal. Why did you grab that runaway slave and send it back to the plantation? Because it's illegal. He shouldn't have run away. You can even be in the North and be like, I'm not a slave owner, but I mean, it's the law, so I'm going to send the slave back to the South.
But the times were so different back then. So different.
Yeah, but those times still have repercussions, right? We're not over slavery. These blacks are still ghettoized and everything. Like the poverty correlation you acknowledge is that most of the crime-ridden areas are the poor areas, which are the black areas. You don't think that's like an inherent problem or something that can be perpetuated? It's not ever something that can be solved by more policing. What do you think the police are going to do? Even if they're doing their jobs to the best of their ability, like I said, every crime they get is a child who lost a father. Yeah.
Are you saying a child who lost a father? Isn't the police arrest a father for breaking the law?
Yes.
And that's a wrong thing to do?
Well, it's a difficult issue, obviously, but it's certainly not a right thing to do objectively in any sense.
I think it is the right thing to do. If he's breaking the law, I think it's simple. If they're doing their job correctly, they're going to arrest people who are breaking the law.
No, but you've sent a disproportionate number of cops to the black neighborhood, so you're going to catch a disproportionate number of crimes, which is going to make...
No, it's not. It's not crimes that the police are there just waiting and watching for crimes to happen. It's calls.
That's patrolling.
Yeah, I think that is what's happening. I mean, that's what I think.
Yeah, that's where's
the evidence of that though?
It's like that's like definitionally like how police deployment works. Like you can correct me if I'm wrong, but
you just send out
evidence points.
You send out a certain number of officers to patrol. Those officers look at their statistics very poorly and say, oh, there's more crime in this area, we've got to send more cops there. Look at them the next time. There's even more crime because we found more crime because we sent more cops there.
But you're talking about the police like they're not smart, right? Like they're doing their job as they're told, and most police officers, like, yes, there are patrol officers, right? That's a position as well. But there are police officers who are on call for like break-in and enterings and murders and robberies and things
Yeah.
like that, where they're not just watching. And I mean, like,
That's not what we're talking about, though. That's I don't know exactly the logistics of it, but that's kind of like a different category, right? Like on
Yeah,
call.
like we're
Just-
talking. We
no,
would
it's
be
still-
talking
it's
about
still
the patrol
police.
category.
Are we just talking about
We're talking about one
patrolling
aspect of the
officers?
police. Sure.
Just patrolling officers?
Okay, if you accept the framework of our debate here, all Logan and I have to do is like show that a certain facet of the cops are bad and are not being addressed in that way. We don't need to show that like every individual cop is bad or that every individual cop is like malicious in any way. If there is one subset of the police, i.e. those on patrol, who are, even if not maliciously, even just because they're bad at statistics or something, continuing to perpetuate racial violence, that's still a problem. Like, even if you think it was right in this individual case to arrest someone, that is not addressing the fundamental problem. You're never going to solve this crime by throwing more cops at it. Like, even if you think it was right to arrest an individual guy, like, you're still must acknowledge that like his kid is more likely to grow up poor and still in that area and have no recourse but to commit crimes. Like, it's the same thing Nikola said at the beginning. Like, protests happen for a reason. Well, crimes happen for a reason. Usually the reason being that's the only method by which a person can get themselves up in society at all, because they're just stomped on their whole lives.
Ian, I have a question for you.
Fighting,
Go.
really, like not
In-
Like-
Sorry?
in the-
generally speaking, that's true of like most crimes, but like not all, right?
Which ones doesn't it apply to?
I don't know.
Rape. It would be rape, I think. Everything else I think fits in.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. All right,
Well,
Nico, what were you saying?
Okay, what would you have the solution be if someone in a poor black neighborhood commits a crime?
Mhm.
If someone commits robbery, murder, or something smaller, something larger, whatever. But I especially want to know in the case of felonies, such as robbery, homicide, or manslaughter. And similar cases, what would you have someone do if you think an arrest is fundamentally wrong?
Mhm.
What other solution do you
I
have?
didn't say an arrest is fundamentally wrong in an individual case. What
You're
my
saying
point?
that
Okay,
they're a
sorry.
bad
I
solution because
I
they
get what you're
protect-
saying is. No, I mean that doesn't mean that the best solution is don't arrest people who commit crimes.
So
The best solution
what
is
is the point that it's
Okay.
that it's bad to have police in those neighborhoods arresting
Because-
people for crimes?
because that's perpetuating the criminality. So this is like not addressing the fundamental problem. And my point is not my point is that there is no solution to this problem within the system that exists currently. So you
So do
need a
you-
fundamental overhaul of the system.
Do you concede that if someone commits a crime and is caught committing a crime, they should be arrested?
Yeah, probably on any individual case, yes. That doesn't mean the answer to all of life's problems is to lock up all the people who committed the crimes. Like, we need more fundamental changes than that. The fact that that's what happens, and that I don't think there is a recourse for that within the system, that's why I think we would probably want a complete overhaul of the system. Because you can't fix it. You're right, there is no better solution than arresting them.
How do you do a complete overhaul of the system? How would that work?
This is not a topic that we could really cover in the course of today, but it would be like
Okay.
the revolution stuff, right? Like, you
Okay.
watched Philosophy of Antifa with me. Like,
Yeah.
It's all that like going
But-
beyond democracy stuff, right? So you can
Yeah,
have we can debate on this some other time, but like capitalism is core to causing criminality, right? You recognize the correlation between poverty and criminality. People don't have what they need, and they don't have any recourse for getting what they need or getting higher in society, so they turn to crime. If you abolish the systems by which people are maintained in poverty, you're gonna have a significant drop in crime, like across the board. In the meantime, just put an equal number of cops in each neighborhood, so you don't get skewed data.
No, it's not skewed data. They put cops everywhere and police officers everywhere in Toronto. It's not like a
No, that's not how you can put them everywhere and still have them more dense in certain places. You get what I'm saying?
yeah.
So just spread them out equally. and then you'll get better data, and then you can like
But
inform
I
yourself
think
based on that.
a big problem is that people blame the system. Like this system, I think as soon as you start to put this whole problem on the police system, I feel like that doesn't work, right? I think people need to, I don't know, maybe take responsibility and do, I don't know. I feel like you don't, it's never good to sit around and, or not sit around, but just, it's never good to live life um, thinking that, I mean, in both ways, it's not good to sit around thinking that, I mean, you're privileged and you have things handed to you, but it's also not good to think that society and the system is out to get you. I think if you're
Except
like
for when it
obviously,
is. Sorry.
yes, but it's yeah. I mean, there are obviously instances, but you're not going to find a lot of um, things like obviously, like I said before, police officers aren't like sure they'll check in on people and things like that, especially in high crime neighborhoods where it may seem like they're checking in more or pulling more people over, people of color, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're racist. It just means, I think,
Yeah,
I'm trying to say,
that's my whole point, is that you can have a bunch of non-racist cops and the system forces them to be racist. That's my problem with the system. None of them
how does the
have to be
system,
individually racist.
Essentially encapsulated in like one person. It's like the entire institution, and
No,
like
like
the
this is your whole point, Matt. You just like don't recognize it. It's that there isn't an individual that can be blamed for this. Like you can have a bunch of good people, and what we're saying is a bunch of good people can go into a system like the police is currently and come out the other side either bad people or not being accountable to the bad people within them.
but the police is not a bad system. It's not a bad system. If
We've just spent
like,
an
Well,
hour
the
arguing
debate
they are.
is over whether or not it is.
yes, but I'm saying it's not a bad system. I think
Right.
the amount
Yeah.
of I think the amount of like obviously the amount of crimes that are like I don't know, the amount of criminals that are put away and amount of things that are what's the word? Sorry, I'm blanking. The amount of things that are uh, avoided because of police intervention or just different things like that. I feel like the police is obviously a good system. If we didn't have a system, and obviously that's very drastic if we had no police system, but the police are generally a good system. They were obviously created to maintain some order in society.
Yeah.
And I
Order
think
at
that
the
for the most
expense
part,
of
it's-
groups. Yeah.
So without the police, order would topple. You wouldn't have someone
Yeah,
to keep
okay,
you from doing
but-
bad things.
Okay, that's true in this society, but Logan and I aren't arguing that we just abolish the police and leave everything else that it is. Well, we agree that's a complete mess. Like you can't just take out the police because they're bad and leave everything else. You take out the police because they're bad. You take out capitalism because it's enforcing the crime. You take out the prisons, which are reinforcing the crime. You need to take out all these pieces at the same time. This is why the slow reform doesn't work, because of all the reasons you're saying. Like, you can't reform the system. It's inherent to the system. And all the reasons that you're saying, oh no, it's not the system, it's this. Everything you said, it's this, that's the system. The system perpetuates it. There's no way to, you can't just get rid of one aspect of the system, because it'll either come back or you'll get just chaos.
So maybe we should transition now into possible solutions to fix problems with the police system, because it'll be interesting to hear your solutions.
Well, okay,
Yeah.
so we can do that, but I don't think you guys have recognized that there is a problem with the police.
No, I recognize that there are problems. For example, that
There are problems-
and other people like him were not prosecuted immediately.
That's
Yeah, I
a
agree
very
with that.
small scale problem.
like at what those individual problems like form into some sort of larger pattern. Like, yeah, I guess.
Yeah. What I'm saying is you guys don't even seem interested in looking for an alternative to the police. You guys seem like you're fine with the police.
Well, mention some alternatives, and we'll see what we think.
Yeah,
Okay, but-
I agree.
talk about this because
Okay.
first an anarchist, like law, if you could even call it that. I don't know.
Anarchist what?
Law enforcement. I don't even know.
Okay.
Like,
Okay. So it's basically it's in the context of a ton of other things that we don't have time to get into here. And the fact that it's in the context of those is going to make it sound like, oh, how could this possibly be done? Because you can't reform it from the police into what I'm saying. It needs to like have some kind of like global change, not global, but like national change, right? Like if my proposal could just reform the system and keep it as it is, but like make it better, then like I don't even know what we would be debating here. What I'm saying is you can't reform the system. That's what I mean when I say there's a systemic problem. So I guess the alternative is one, in a post-capitalist world you have much less crime because you don't have inequality, you don't have poverty, which breeds the crime. And like there's no reason to steal things if you're doing fine, if you're risking like any form of punishment that may exist in that system. You're just not going to risk it if you're doing fine in life, right?
It's not
So, yeah,
necessarily
basically-
true, because someone can always do better, and want to commit crime for that. To give an example, an example from my family in communist former Yugoslavia. So one of my relatives when one of my relatives grew up in a family that, though they were not well off because of the poverty of communism, they they had enough, to eat, to live in a warm house, to have clothes, right? They had necessities and a little extra, but not tons. So
Yeah.
they, along with most of their neighbors, had enough to get by. But the relative I'm talking about wanted more. She wanted to be one of the rich people living on the hill, and so she committed embezzlement and went to jail for that. So that's an example of someone who is well off, and in what the communist state, what the communist government would say. Here's an example of someone who is doing fine in the socialist system.
Yeah. So but it's not
Nevertheless
it's not a completely socialist system because you have people on the hill and you have people stoking jealousy of that. If there is no person on the hill, if everyone is actually equal to some degree, like
I don't
not
think
like
that's possible.
in
Your
for
to some
Yeah, I
degree
don't think that's
clause
possible either.
brings it out.
not like enforced equality, but like not class based. Like you don't have people on the hill that are completely separate from you and above you that you
Ian,
strive
in in this world, people, regardless of where they are, can always take more in a good way and in a bad way.
Yeah, that's
So people
capitalism.
can always
So that's why I say it's systemic, and that's the problem.
see, but that's just human nature at that point. No
But
matter
it's
what
not
government
human
system
nature.
you put on the world, Ian, I think it is. No matter what government
Okay.
system you put in the world, no
So-
matter what government you put me in, I can
Alright.
still take something to have more.
So let's
No
let's
matter where
look
you
at
put me.
let's draw this back to the protest a little bit and look at human nature. So you have like the right wing protests, which were like in Michigan or something close to Minnesota, like a month ago or so, where they like stormed the Capitol and they demanded the lockdown to be over and such, right? And they're all fighting for their like individual rights because they're being oppressed or whatever, right? And they're all like stepping on each other, and they're all operating under this human nature is inherently selfish and self-destructive, and everybody just wants more than everybody else, and you're trying to install some kind of state where you're suppressing us, so we need to rise up as like the quarantine people, whatever it was. Like that's the kind of ideology that operates there. But then you look at like the left-wing protests that are happening in Minnesota, and like when they raided the Target, like most of that stuff, like you had people taking TVs and whatever. I don't particularly care about that, honestly. But like most of the stuff that was in that Target got like put out for like dispensal to like the public, like protesters. Like they had
They destroyed it. They burned the store.
Yeah, but they took the things out of the store. They have a lot of justified anger at the store, but that they still took their supplies and they didn't hoard them all. It wasn't people running in and grabbing as much as possible, running back to their homes and sitting on their pile of wealth.
That
They-
did happen. That for sure did happen at some
Not
places.
not
where
in any significant number and not with any essential goods. I don't care
Ian,
about like
if even one
TVs
person
or
did
stuff.
it messes up your argument that there can be equality. If even
No,
one
because
person did
no,
more to put
it
themselves
doesn't.
on the hill,
I'm not saying
Have a TV that someone else doesn't have in a socialist society. A socialist society is just it's who owns the businesses. Whether
yeah,
it's
I mean it's
those-
It's the
Floyd.
non-existence of people on the hill, that, like in your example of Yugoslavia. It's not that you can't have more than your neighbor just by coincidence or whatever. It's that there can't be people on the hill that you're jealous of and that honestly exploit you. Like,
But it is human nature to be jealous and want more than you have. That's just human nature. Like everyone,
it doesn't
I
have to
don't.
be. Like,
But
why is
how
that just human
can
nature?
it not be? How
If you're raised
can
in a
it not be?
if you're raised in a society where it's not, then it isn't. You were raised in a society where it was, so it is. So people steal TVs sometimes. But even in the context of this incredibly oppressive regime that just instigates this is human nature, there's nothing we can do about it, you still, even in the context of all that, have people in an isolated city who will raid a Target and still want to distribute the goods. That is, I'm not going to argue it's human nature, because I don't think that's legitimate to argue either side is true human nature. But I think that's much more likely to happen in an alternative society, is that you can have people where when everything is commodified and there's a price above everything, you're going to take everything you can get. When everything is just freely given, not where TVs are concerned, but where food and necessities are concerned, where everything is freely given, you're just going to take what you need and leave everything for everybody else, and you can help each other. If you're not in imminent risk of being like destroyed by poverty or dying or whatever of starvation, like you don't have to act selfishly, and so you don't, and so all of society benefits because nobody's acting selfishly, and nobody's going to break that arrangement. They're equally viable in terms of like how stable they are once they're in practice. Honestly, anarchism would be a lot more viable, considering capitalism devolves immediately into stuff like this as soon as a single black guy gets like murdered, then it all devolves back into riots. Like, wait for the next time a black guy gets murdered, and then hopefully.
But what kind of progress is that? Like that's not progress. Destroying a city is not progress.
No, I would absolutely agree. It's not progress towards that goal. It is not productive.
No.
In the sense of moving towards a goal. But I'm not gonna like condemn it. Like as Nikola opened the conversation saying, it was a result of the initial conditions.
Excuse me. I need to go. I'm going to have to sign off now. Thank you very much for
All right.
inviting me. I've
Okay.
really enjoyed hearing the arguments, and I hope this continues to go well. Sorry to disrupt the balance.
Yeah,
No, it's all
Anyways,
good.
man.
Yeah.
Good to
All
meet
good.
you.
Yeah.
Good to see you again, Nico.
Yeah, bye, Keegan, Logan, Ian, Matt. Have a good life.
He just leaves right on life.
Never
That's
saw
good.
him again. Damn. I think I'm also probably gonna head out, not to like make it
All
fall
right.
apart, but
All good.
yeah.
Honestly,
Matt, it was very nice to meet you.
Yeah, man. Good to
And,
meet you too.
Yeah. Good to see you, Logan.
Yeah,
And Ian, I'll see you guys all again hopefully pretty soon on Zoom.
Yep.
All right, cool.
If you guys are gonna keep debating, then have a wonderful rest of your debate.
Yeah, you guys want to like do this next week or something? Make it regular to some degree. Oh wow!
I'm down to do it.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm gonna have like infinite time starting week after next because school gets
Okay.
out. So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that sounds
just-
good. That sounds good.
Good.
I should probably go too. It's getting
All right.
late. I've
Yeah.
worked a lot. But yeah, no. It's good to meet you, Logan.
yeah, you
Good
too.
to see you again, Ian.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I'm down to do this
right, cool.
weekly or whenever we decide to do it. So yeah. All right.
Yeah. All right.
See you guys later.
We'll try to pick like a topic more in advance next time, maybe, so we have like time to prepare or think about it if we want. Does that sound
Yeah,
good?
that's fair. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
All right.
See
See
ya.
ya.